Hi, so I am Shaylin Hayes-Raymond from Misophonia International and the International Misophonia Foundation. I founded Misophonia International with Dr. Jennifer Jo Brout in 2015. She has since moved on to other projects, and I fully support her still. But Misophonia International is now part of the International Misophonia Foundation, a nonprofit in Missouri. And I am starting today a new series called Misophonia Horror Stories. And I first want to thank Hannah Alonso, who I will link in the description, who has done horror stories on MLMs. And I actually watched all 89 videos. And it got me thinking that people with misophonia deserve to have their stories told. So, this series, you can anonymously send your story to either Shaylin at misophoniafoundation.com or through the link that I'll provide below, which will be a web form. So we are thinking that maybe in the future this could become like an anthology in books, but the idea is to get content out there that shows the horror stories that people with misophonia are dealing with. Now, this can be things that have gone wrong in relationships. This can be things that have gone wrong at jobs. Maybe you're the partner with misophonia and you've had trouble, or maybe you're the partner without misophonia and it's led to tension. Now, I do want to say that in no way do we want to shame people with the disorder, but we do want to keep things fair here. So if a story comes in about, a tumultuous relationship and maybe it's from the person without misophonia, we probably still will share that without any judgment on our part, because this is merely sharing the stories of the people impacted by misophonia, and I am not going to be editorializing these things. So essentially, what I'm going to do today is read you an anonymous story that was sent in to Misophonia International. And I will never give out names, and all other names have been redacted. So if you send in your own story, I do suggest you making up fake names or redacting information. Or if you're totally comfortable with names being shared, that is fine too. That is totally up to you. The story I'm going to be reading was sent anonymously, and all personal information was redacted, as I explained can be done. And I do want to just kind of like give my commentary to start and say that this story is a little heavy and it does involve work, and I personally found it very hard to hear. So if you have a really bad work experience yourself, feel free to send it in, or feel free to skip this video if it's too soon for you. So I titled this story when I published it after it was sent in, When Employers Ignore Misophonia Workplace Accommodations. And as I said, all personal details are completely omitted. So let's begin. This is written in the point of view of the person who had the experience. So I'm starting now. I was hired on with unnamed company to work on a project in May 2022 as an automation and control system engineer. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety and PTSD and have been under treatment for these conditions, as well as misophonia through an audiologist. From May 2022 to July 2023, the majority of my workload was done from inside the control room. The control room is a very controlled environment, and personnel have to follow very specific rules while working within the confines of the con. In July of 2023, we completed the control room portion of this project. For example, they have a strict rule of no gum chewing, and the con operators must take turns eating their meals. It was a very spacious room where worker stations were all facing away from each other, and the lighting was kept dim. It was overall a very low stimulating environment for personnel to work in. I make this point to say that this was, for the most part, a very safe place for me to work. I say for the most part, because sometimes people would break the no gum chewing rule and it would aggravate my condition some. But a little stimulus is not as bad as what I was exposed to after we completed processing. When we completed processing, my job definition changed a little bit. I was no longer required to be hands-on with my system so consistently, and as a result, I found myself mostly confined to my desk in the trailer. This is an open communal cubicle situation where all the engineers work. Because of the nature of my neurological condition, it took me a couple months to realize that I could not work in this environment. I was continually being attacked by noises. When this happens, it causes me great pain and makes my brain function shut down and effectively brainwashes me, causing me to continually become more and more sensitive to stimuli. Months of research and searching for providers who knew of my very rare condition, I finally found an audiologist who was informed of my condition and started seeing my audiologist on December 15th, 2023. And in brackets, it said, I sought help from many doctors, ENTs, therapists, etc., who all turned me away, baffled at my condition. She diagnosed me with H93.293, which is an abnormal auditory perception of bilateral ears, and fitted me with sound generators, which I habituated to instantly. She also provided me with an accommodation letter that I could bring to my employer and get myself out of the dangerous environment that I was currently working in. And I do want to say here, just personally, as Shaylin, as an aside, that there are no diagnostic codes for misophonia, so it makes sense that this audiologist took the code that worked best for her, because unfortunately, misophonia is not in the DSM or the International Disease Manual. I forget what it's called, like ICD-7 or something. Sorry, I can't remember what it is. But yeah, it's very common for providers who do believe it's a real disorder and have read the research to say, okay, I don't have the actual code for this, but we'll go with what fits best. So I am really happy that this audiologist was able to do that. All right, back to the letter. She also provided me with an accommodation letter that I could bring to my employer and get myself out of the dangerous environment that I was currently working in. It just so happened that at the time, since my job details had changed due to the completion of processing, I was being transferred from the site to another location. So I thought it would be an opportune time to present my accommodation letter. My accommodation letter at the time stated I ought to be in an isolated workplace away from other employees. I was given 4 different options, all cubicle open communal situations, all next to other employees. I chose the desk that met my accommodations the best at the time. But it was Christmas and most people were on vacation at the time, and I didn't know that some people were going to be my neighbors in just a week or two after settling in. I went back to my audiologist and had her modify my accommodations to be more specific. In the beginning, she left it a bit vague because she wasn't sure what my workplace looked like and wanted to leave it to my and my employer's best judgment to work it out. I had a lengthy conversation with her explaining what my workplace was, and we ironed out what my accommodation should be. We agreed that either having a door that shuts, having 4 enclosed walls with no other people, or the ability to work remotely and come on site as required would be reasonable accommodations for my situation. I then brought the updated accommodations back to my HR contact, and I submitted it via the correct avenues, emailing it to unnamed individual who I believe is in employee relations, and then I waited and waited. I went to the HR rep several times over the following months, asking about the status of my accommodations. Every time I spoke with her, it sounded promising, and I wouldn't have to wait much longer. The entire time I was waiting, I was only getting sicker and sicker. I was beginning to suffer from major panic attacks. On March 7th, 2023, I received an invitation from an unnamed individual who is the ethics officer with employee relations to meet at 5 p.m. to follow up on my accommodations. I was partly engaged at that time and had to reschedule for the following Monday, the 11th at 2 p.m. Nothing resulted from this conversation either. Then, the last time I spoke with her on March 19th, 2024, I told her that since my accommodations haven't been able to be worked out, me and my acting direct report, unnamed supervisor, had worked out a deal where I work on site in the mornings and remotely in afternoons. She told me that he didn't have the authority to give me the ability to do that. I told her that I need my accommodations and can only do what I can do. I asked her if she was able to find an appropriate place for my desk location, and she told me that there was nowhere for me to be. So I told her then I will continue to do what I can do. She asked me how it was that I would like her to make my life perfect. Oh Lord, I'm sorry, like just this idea of people with misophonia, like just being kind of like whiny little brats who want accommodations for the hell of it. It just gets me. Like, we would do anything in the world to be normal. I promise you. I promise you, we would do anything in the world to just live our lives without having to negotiate every little detail because it's exhausting. We don't want to do that. But anyway, okay. I told her to read my doctor's accommodation letter and said that it shouldn't be this hard to help someone with a disability. It should. She's totally right. And I'm so sorry this happened. I was crying by this point. I gave her a hug and told her that I was sorry for making a scene. HR rep proceeded to go directly to unnamed supervisor's direct report and reported what I had told her and that he did not have the authority to make that call. I ended up taking PTO for the rest of the day as a mental health day since I was not allowed to work remotely. While I was at home trying to forget the stress, I received a text message from HR rep. Hi, author. This is HR rep. You should have gotten an invite from unnamed individual. We are following up on your ADA request. Would it be better for you to remain on PTO and take the call from home? I think maybe we should meet with my doctor too. She can explain my condition a lot better than I can. That would have to be unnamed individual and unnamed individual call. Can I email them and let you know? Okay. I have not heard back from that yet. I would plan on attending tomorrow and see what the meeting brings. If we need your schedule an appointment with the doctor, we can do that. I would think there would have to be some paperwork involved for your doctor to speak to HR. And the final message, whatever it takes. The next morning, March 20th, 2024, I had my audiologist on standby, ready to jump into the meeting. Whenever they all decided to have it. Then I received an email from unnamed individual saying, let's go ahead and have the meeting without my doctor. Luckily for me, my mom also is an engineer who works on the project. I had her come into the meeting with me to advocate for me, and it's a good thing I did because they were opposed to fire me. I just want to say that the fact that HR is making these decisions on whether or not you should have an advocate and have a clinician with you. I am Canadian, not American, but I don't know how legal that is. If you said that you want this individual there to advocate for you, I don't understand how the company can say, oh, no, we're not going to have them there. We don't want them there. Is it just laziness for not wanting to do the paperwork? Is it fear that things will escalate if you have your doctor there? I don't know. So if anyone in the comments wants to let me know, can your boss or HR say no, you can't have your doctor with you in a meeting as an advocate? I really want to know. All right. HR rep filed a complaint against me, the first and only one I had, and said I was unprofessional and they didn't know if they could allow me working there. I had to pull the ADA card. My mom stated that I had mentioned in the past that I would be happy with a broom closet. I stated that it didn't make sense to me. We have all these open offices. Why couldn't I just have one of those? Unnamed individual turned the conversation on HR rep, who gave the excuse that it was mostly filled with part-timers. I know I've seen at least one office that was completely void of personnel. At this point, I was crying and pleading, saying that, please, I just want to be able to go to a restaurant again. Being so inundated by noises in the workplace as I was had made it so that I was having to isolate myself more and more for the health of my brain. Sorry. The end result was that they sent me home that morning on short-term disability on the promise that they would work out my accommodation situation. Where I am now, May 9th, 2024. My short-term disability still has not been approved. It has been over 7 weeks without pay, and I do believe that unnamed company is fully responsible for this undue financial hardship. They're denying my short-term disability in terms of not enough medical information, even though all my doctors have done their due diligence and after I signed their medical release, including a sweeping medical release. I've requested all my doctors to go ahead and send my information again just this morning. This story is obviously very heartbreaking, and it, in my opinion, highlights just how hard this can be for individuals, especially when they're working with HR that does not understand a disorder. But I would have hoped that, having an audiologist there to confirm it's real, this person needs the accommodations would have been enough. But apparently, HR are gods that can control our lives and whether or not we get what we need, apparently. This is why I work from home, and I'm glad I'm Canadian. That's all I'm saying, because at least in Canada, what I've noticed is if you are given a doctor's accommodation, the doctor usually says, hey, give them this. And then the employer says, okay, we will. We don't really use insurance codes or anything like that here. So this is just frustrating to me, and I'm very sorry that this person had to deal with all this. And I hope this story highlights that we do have to advocate for ourselves. We have to fight for ourselves to get the accommodations that we need and deserve. And I hope that as we go forward in the future, that there is enough awareness on misophonia that this can stop happening to people.